In the church's liturgical calendar, the second Sunday of Easter is always also called Divine Mercy Sunday. And whenever I think of mercy, oftentimes my best illustrations of that have come from my father. Because any time that I've done something wrong or something that was rather foolish, usually it was Dad that had the answer or the remedy. I remember all too well one particular occasion that we were piling up brush into one of the vehicles on the farm, and I was getting ready to take it out to the field. And my dad said, "Be careful and don't go into this one particular spot. It's too wet, you won't get out." And what did I do but immediately go to that spot? And I remember thinking to myself, what am I going to do? I don't want to admit to my dad that I just did exactly what he said I shouldn't. And he actually saved me in the indignity of trying to call him because he called me instead. And he said, "You went straight for that spot, didn't you?" And indeed he knew. So then he came out, he pulled me out, and I was able to get back home, even though I felt a little bit foolish at the time. And likely we've all got experiences of someone giving us mercy in some way. Maybe it's a predicament, maybe it's something that went wrong and we needed some assistance, that we needed some help or some mercy. And what better display of it than from God our Father? And we're given a beautiful account of it in today's gospel as we hear about this passage when the Lord appears to his disciples and then he appears to Thomas as well. We all know the story rather well, I dare say, that it's something we hear each and every year, but it's beautiful to go back and recount. So we're told that the disciples, they're all gathered together, and they're gathered in this locked room for fear of the Jews. Notice how many times the Lord has told them, "Be not afraid. Do not be afraid of anything that can happen to you." And yet, where are they? They're cowering in fear. And yet, the Lord appears to them in that moment, that he comes to them and he gives them those beautiful words to save them from that place where they are, the very place where they were told not to go, that place of fear and anxiety. And he tells them, "Peace be with you." Again, reminding them, do not be afraid. So he shows them his hands and his side, but we're told that one of the disciples had the misfortune of not being there. Why was he not there? Was there some other obligation? Did something else come up? We're not told. The gospel doesn't quite say. And yet he just wasn't there. And so the disciples, they're overjoyed, and whenever they go to this disciple, Thomas, that we are told by name, whenever they go to him and they say, "We have seen the Lord," he's naturally doubtful. That his human heart, it overcomes that life of faith that has been planted in his soul. And so he starts to tell the disciples that sure, like you've got your account, but unless I see the marks, unless I put my fingers into the nail marks and put my hand into his side, I'm not going to believe. Now, in this moment, we likely might not have blamed him because we say, well, his circumstances were different. But notice what happens later on. That again, a week later, the Lord appears to all the disciples, including Thomas, and he again says the same thing. "Peace be with you. Do not be afraid." And then he turns to Thomas. He tells him to look, to put his finger into the nail marks, put his hand into his side, and do not be unbelieving, but believe. And it's at that moment, notice Thomas doesn't need to put his hands into his side. He doesn't need to put his finger into the nail marks, but rather he just simply says, "My Lord and my God." And then the Lord, he actually chastises him a little bit. That we might not have blamed him, but the Lord does. Because notice what he says. He says, "Have you come to believe because you've seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and have believed." And so this is a moment of recognition that Thomas had actually not a moment where there was a moment that he was not selected, but it was a moment of opportunity that unfortunately he squandered at that very moment. And yet notice in that moment that he squandered, the Lord could have just simply left him there in his unbelief, but he didn't. That he actually heard what Thomas was saying and he brought him out of that place. That he needed a little bit of that gift of what we call mercy. Now, what is mercy exactly? If we go to Fulton Sheen in his book, The Way of Happiness, he actually tells us a little bit about what mercy is and what it's not. First, what it is not. Mercy is not an emotion. It's not a feeling. Because the world at large, it loves to preach about mercy, but in the wrong way. Because it wants the warm fuzzies. It wants something that feels good and something that seems right. Or at least it's this abstract reality that it can't quite seem to grasp. And so we're told to be merciful just by being lenient, by just simply letting people walk all over you, or just simply whenever they wrong you or do whatever, that you just kind of walk around and act as if it doesn't matter. And Fulton Sheen, he's very keen on this idea, and he says that is not what mercy is, but mercy hinges on justice. So what is justice? Justice is the recognition of what should rightly be done, and then whenever it is not done, it's not giving leniency, but rather it's acknowledging that we need something else to make it right. That it is that forgiveness, it is compassion, it is a gentleness and kindness in making things right again. And so it's not just that feeling or that mere sentiment, but it in fact has to be an act of choice. It's a sacrifice of sorts on the one who has been wronged or on that side. And so it is actually trying to make things right again by that forgiveness, by that compassion, by what we call mercy. But let's make this a little more real. Let's bring this down to earth because, in fact, as we see the gospel, it's very easy to kind of see Thomas walking around. But do we understand? Many times we're Thomas ourselves. What is the first thing we need to understand about mercy? We need to understand when we actually need it. Because all too often, the reason we're not asking for mercy is that we're not actually looking for opportunities to receive it. And that requires an awareness of sin. Whenever we're doing things that we should not be doing, or whenever we haven't done the things that we should, that these, in fact, are moments where we do need the Lord's mercy, where the Lord is not just simply indifferent to it all, that He's not just simply being lenient with us as if we can just kind of presume on this mercy. But He's looking for the moments that we return, when we acknowledge that we've done something we shouldn't or we didn't do what we should have. And so this requires us to account for things and actually to be honest in our heart of hearts that we've wronged someone else and we've done wrong within our heart and our soul. And notice too that whenever it came to the potential excuse that Thomas had, the Lord doesn't count that as an excuse, that He counts it as an opportunity to overcome. Because whenever we are living our life of faith, many times whenever we are being faithful, we will start to say, why is the Lord handing me a burden that is harder than anyone else? The Lord treats others that are doing much worse things in a much better way. And so we start to say to ourselves, why is the Lord doing this? And this is a potential area where we can become angry and hard of heart. But we truly don't understand the Lord's mercy if we are looking at life that way, as if it's a game of comparison and competition. Because the Lord, He doesn't say, well, because you were treated differently than the other disciples, I understand. He says, why didn't you believe? You had an opportunity and you blew it. And that's the thing we need to understand. We cannot excuse ourselves whenever life is more difficult, even whenever we're living a life of faith. That whenever circumstances are different, whenever it feels like we weren't present when the Lord appeared to all the others, we need to understand it's a moment of opportunity. What does the Lord say in the Scriptures? The Lord often chastises the one that He loves. So that does not mean life is going to be easier for the believer. But many times we're going to have difficult circumstances and moments that make us ask why. And Thomas might have had that as well. And we need to understand, the Lord isn't looking for an excuse. He isn't looking for us to say, well, my way is more difficult, and to start to become angry with Him. Rather, He's looking for us to respond to those circumstances and to trust. Reward is coming in time. But then there comes a crucial step, and it's a hinge and a pivotal moment whenever we are living a life of grace. Whenever we recognize the need for mercy, there is a critical step that often we forget. The ask. Are we willing to call out to God our Father and ask for that mercy in the places that we need it? In the places of vulnerability, in those places of woundedness or hurt, whenever we recognize we haven't done what the Lord asked. And so we need to actually ask the Lord for the mercy that we desire. And that's why the reconciliation room, why the confessional is so important and so powerful. It is that place of mercy. It is that place where we acknowledge, yes, I haven't done what I should have done. And yet the Lord, He gives us that gift of forgiveness, that He has compassion upon us, and He deals with us in a very gentle and kind way. And so He pulls us out of where we are. But that all hinges on our ask, our ability, our courage to cross the threshold of that door. And that is why it's so often preached upon. Too many priests in the past have not spoken about confession, and that is a travesty, because that is limiting God's mercy in some way. The Lord wants to be very lavish with us. As many times as we approach and go into the confessional, that is as many times as we can receive that gift of mercy. And Thomas, notice, he actually did acknowledge that things weren't right, that he spoke to the Lord in that moment of need, and the Lord was able to respond. And then the final thing, that yes, we are supposed to be recipients of mercy, but we can't just be recipients. We also need to be givers of mercy as well, because we live in a merciless society, in a merciless world. You don't have to go very far to see it. If you're simply driving down I-55, you can look and see all sorts of merciless people. Or whenever we're out shopping, how many people are so focused on self that they are not looking to bestow mercy upon us? Or even in the comments section on any social media platform, take your pick. How many people are being merciless there and not actually acting in Christian charity? And this means that we are living in a land ripe with opportunity. Because, yes, we need the Father's forgiveness. We need the mercy that is being given to us in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. But we also need to be giving it out very lavishly to others. Because we need a world that needs the witness. It needs mercy, but it needs the possibility of being united to Christ and His mercy as well, especially by our own witness. Because mercy, it's not just a feeling, it's not just this abstract emotion, but it's actually something that is very beautiful and very powerful. It's a virtue that is given to us by our Lord, but is also an invitation for us to give to others. Because we don't need to just drive out in the middle of the field to experience the Father's mercy. But all too often we need that lavish gift that the Lord wants to make everything right again by His forgiveness, by His gentleness and kindness towards us. The Lord showed mercy to Thomas and even to the other disciples that day. May we, my brothers and sisters, also be recipients and givers of that gift of the Lord's mercy.